Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into some serious linguistic detective work. We're going to explore a genuinely fascinating puzzle, which is how on earth do you translate ancient texts into modern languages when the original timelines are just, well, all over the place? It's a huge challenge, and it literally forces translators to act like structural architects.
But to really grasp this problem, we gotta look at ourselves first. Think about a story like this. So this guy comes up and asks for help, and I go, "I can't help you right now, I'm late for work." Then he says he needs help, but I was late all that week, so I couldn't be late again. Okay, what did I just do there? First, I told a past event totally in the present tense. And then right at the very end, I casually threw in some past tense background information that is completely out of chronological order. And the crazy thing? You, as an English speaker, understood it perfectly. No confusion at all. We just jumped timelines naturally.
But here's the catch. We absolutely cannot always do that in other languages. See, while our long literary tradition makes jumping around timelines super easy for us, groups without written traditions, or speakers of a ton of global languages, they demand a strict, step-by-step sequence. For them, out-of-order narratives aren't just, a quirky stylistic choice. They're entirely illogical. They're flat-out confusing.
Section 1. The chronology problem.
So let's dive into this. The core problem really pops up when translators hit ancient passages that blatantly ignore chronological order. I mean, what do you do when a sacred text simply doesn't flow from A to B to C? Take Revelation chapter 5. An angel asks, "Who is worthy to open the scrolls and break its seals?" Now, if you translate that literally into a strict chronology language, your audience is going to be incredibly confused, because logically, you have to break the seals first and then you can open the scroll. You literally can't open it before breaking the seals.
Or check out this scenario from Mark chapter 1. Jesus heals a leper, and the text says he sternly warned him, immediately sent him away, and then gave him detailed instructions on what to tell the priest. Just picture that for a second. Ask yourself, did Jesus seriously shout these highly detailed instructions at the guy's back while he was already walking away? Well, no, probably not. But a literal sequential reading creates exactly that confusing mental image. And this exact same issue pops up in the famous parable of the Good Samaritan. A literal reading of the text tells us the Samaritan bound up the man's wounds by pouring oil and wine on them. But wait a minute, wine was a cleaning agent and oil was used to soothe the skin. You have to pour the liquids on before you put the bandages on, right? Once again, the timeline is practically backwards.
Section 2. Hebrew storytelling styles.
Now, let's be really clear here. These are absolutely not mistakes. What we're looking at is a completely different, culturally ingrained way of telling a story. The crucial thing to understand is the Hebrew narrative pattern. Their custom is to state the broad general event right up front, and then circle back to provide all the specific details of exactly how that event went down. And here's the fascinating part. Even though the New Testament authors were completely fluent in Greek, they still thought like Hebrews. So they just overlaid this general first, specific later storytelling style right onto their Greek writing.
You can see this beautifully in Mark chapter 5. Verse 2 makes this big general statement. Jesus got out of the boat, and immediately a man from the tombs met him. Boom, general statement. But then, as you read further down into verse 6, you get a back reference. It's basically a flashback. You suddenly learn that the man was screaming among the tombs, saw Jesus from a distance, and ran up to him. The timeline literally resets itself to fill in the color.
Section 3. Solving translation puzzles.
Now, what's really interesting is how translators fix these timeline knots for new readers. They basically have to step in and become linguistic detectives, and here's the exact methodology they use. First, they break down the actual order of events as they happened in reality, carefully teasing apart those flashbacks. Second, they draft a rewrite that flows smoothly in chronological order. And third, and this is absolutely vital, they test it with the local community. So how exactly do they test it? Well, they'll sit a local person down, read them the draft, and simply ask, "Hey, can you tell me in your own words what just happened?" And then the translator just sits back and listens. Did the listener leave anything out? Did their brain try to change the information to make it fit? Were they confused because the sequence just felt weird or illogical to them? That kind of direct feedback tells the translator exactly where the communication barriers still are.
Section 4. Rearranging the verses.
And this brings us to a really critical tool. It's honestly perhaps the most powerful one in the translator's toolkit. Physically rearranging verses to match chronological reality. Look at this wild example from Jonah chapter 1. In the literal text, the sailors get extremely frightened, and then the text explains it was because Jonah had told them he was fleeing from the Lord. So the fear comes first, and the reason comes second. But if you rearrange that chronologically, moving the detail that he told them he was fleeing to before their frightened reaction, it creates a phenomenally smoother reading experience. Cause and then effect.
Let's look at a much more complicated one. The Mark 6 flashback about John the Baptist is notoriously difficult. The literal text tells you Herod thinks Jesus is a resurrected John, and then it just jumps wildly backward to explain that Herod had arrested John because he married his brother Philip's wife Herodias because John told him it was unlawful. I mean, it is a dizzying maze. To actually translate it, you have to deconstruct it into a true timeline. Philip and Herodias marry, Herod takes her, John rebukes him, Herodias gets angry, and then John is arrested.
Once that true timeline is established, translators can actually restructure the text by laying out the family drama first, and then showing John's rebuke, and then the arrest. Applying this timeline completely removes the cognitive burden on the reader. Suddenly, this chaotic flashback transforms into an incredibly clear, dramatic story.
Section 5. Impactful communication.
All right, so this brings us to the massive philosophical elephant in the room when we talk about this kind of translation work. Let me play devil's advocate for just a second here. Is it actually okay to do this? Is it okay to add clarifying time words or physically reorder verses in a sacred text like the Bible? Are translators somehow violating the original document when they do this?
Well, a key insight from the source material addresses this perfectly. It says, we're not changing any of the information in the text. We're changing the presentation of the information in the text. Think about it. Just as translators routinely have to adjust grammar to fit a new language, they also have a massive responsibility to adjust literary style. If the original Hebrew narrative style simply doesn't fit the target audience's style, you absolutely must adjust it so they can actually understand it.
And this right here is the main takeaway. Unchronological events are not missing information. All the original details, all the historical facts, they remain completely intact. But if they're presented in the wrong order for a specific culture, they just become massive barriers to communication. Those stumbling blocks have to be removed, or the reader's just going to throw their hands up and give up.
So, I want to leave you with this provocative final thought. If a translation follows the original text so strictly and so literally that it leaves the reader utterly confused, have we really translated it well? True translation goes way beyond just swapping out mere words. It's about ensuring absolute clarity and genuinely impactful communication. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this changes how you look at the languages of the world.